So I said, I do not want to take off tourist highlights. Yeah, that was not the plan that I had, because tourist highlights are usually crowded, especially in summer. So we skipped many of those, yeah, and simply want to go on the countryside, see the country, see the people, meet the people, rather than going from one highlight to the other, rather traveling. Yeah, and that turned out pretty good.
I think especially Wales was quite a surprise because, well, it's got a reason it's also green there. But apart from the rain that we had, it somehow belongs to those countries because it's meant to rain a lot and it did rain a lot. But still, it's got a certain beauty even in the rain when you're like up on a mountain. You see it's all like foggy and mystic, and there's this mist hanging in the mossy trees, and it's still very nice and still good to go and good that we were there. I don't regret a single decision that we made, even if that decision had led us into pouring rain.
Welcome to the Seek Travel Ride podcast, where we share the stories and experiences of people who have undertaken amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello, I'm your host, Bella Malloy, and I'm excited to introduce my guests for today's episode of Seek Travel Ride, Stevie and Tom Thissen. Fans of the podcast will recognise Stevie, who I featured on the show previously when we crossed paths during our first ultra cycling race together last year. During that episode, Stevie revealed that she and her husband Tom were soon to be taking a sabbatical from work and would spend 2 months bikepacking their way through Europe. Well, 5,500 kilometres cycled, 57,000 metres climbed, 8 countries visited on this trip of theirs. It was filled with many adventures, and I was even fortunate to host them for a few days as they made their way through the Pyrenees here in France. Now it's time to find out how it all went and to hear about their experiences gained during this adventure. Stevie and Tom, welcome to the show.
Hello Bella.
Hi, Bella. Thank you for having us here in the show.
So excited to speak to you.
When you first made mention that this trip was happening, Stevie, when we recorded months ago, I was like, oh, I can't wait to do this episode. And then when you stayed here just 4 weeks ago, I got some insights into your trip. And I don't know if you both picked up, but there were points where I didn't want to hear details too much about your story because I knew that I would be recording with you and I want to be able to hear these stories fresh. I know some of the details and I know some of the trials that you went through, but a question which I start my show with, and I ask this of all my guests, and I guess this is really specifically for you, Tom, because we already know Stevie's story. But Tom, can you remember the very first bike you ever rode?
Yes, I do. It was a red children's bike with 18-inch wheels, which was pretty standard these days that you got when you're 6 years old or something to start riding a bike. And I can pretty well remember because my little brother rode that bike as well when he was starting bicycle race. So yeah, that is my first memory, yeah.
Stevie, in case people haven't heard your episode, I should actually quite rightly ask you what your very first bike you ever rode was as well.
Yeah, it was a children's bike it was yellow and it got training wheels. I think it was a Pookie bike.
Both of you growing up there in Germany, and again, Stevie, from our episode, I know that cycling formed just a part of your day-to-day life. You commuted everywhere from your childhood and now into adulthood as well. Tom, are you similar that way? Like, was cycling part of your childhood growing up since you learnt to ride that red bike?
Yes, it's pretty similar. I grew up in a small village in the area of Cologne, and there was little options to go somewhere besides the bike. Yeah, so I took the bike to go to school, go to friends, go to wherever. Yeah, so that was more or less it. So there was less public transport. Either your parents drive you elsewhere or you took the bike. So that was absolutely natural. Yeah. So same here. Yeah.
I guess the other thing, though, then is, and again, I keep harking back to this previous episode, which I recorded with you, Stevie. And for listeners of the show who haven't heard this, I believe it was episode number 9. You can go back and listen through it. But I know that you both met, and I guess your journey together, you did an Ironman together, if I'm correct, and you started training for events together.
Right.
So cycling together, has that been a constant in your relationship?
Oh, yeah. Actually, the first date that we had, no, the second date, well, the first date we actually thought we might do a short cycling trip and then have a bite and, well, get to know each other, which we didn't because it was dark by then. We met in the evening and it was October. But 2 days later, we met again and took our mountain bikes and had a lovely trip through the village, well, the villages and hills nearby Frankfurt. That was nice, yeah. So the bike was part of the first hours.
Even before. So we met online first, and Stevie posted some pictures of her, and it was just 5 pictures, and 3 of them contained her racing bike.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
on the Stelvio and so on. So, and I said, wow, what a woman! So I have to contact her. Yeah, and yeah, this was a little bit a starting point, and and
Yeah.
it continues and continues and continues to ride the bikes. Yeah.
Yeah. But the good thing is being a couple, and we're both interested in sport and especially in cycling. So the good thing is that we can do that together and grow our experiences together. Because like when we met and when we did the first bike trips, we didn't think we would even do an Ironman together or even do something crazy like a bike packing trip. We didn't even know what bike packing was and ultra distance cycling was. So that was something that we picked up together, I'd say.
And that we developed together, yeah.
Or developed
especially
together,
during COVID times, yeah, during all the lockdowns. Cycling was pretty much the only thing you always could do, and so
yeah.
it escalated a little bit for us, yeah, in length and distance and stuff. So yeah, and now we are here.
This is an assumption on my part, but many of my guests now talk to me about those lockdown periods lit the spark for them to go adventuring on a bicycle and take slow travel on a bike, journey from one place to a next, a destination. Some other people, it inspired them to push the boundaries and to see how they went and try out things like ultra cycling. I know the whole reason I know you is because you both signed up for a 900-kilometer ultra cycling event. Tom, unfortunately, you couldn't participate, which in a serendipitous moment meant that Stevie and I befriended each other for a few hours on that first evening. Do you think COVID was a catalyst perhaps to this sort of adventuring, like taking cycling away from going for a few hours on the weekend to all of a sudden this type of focus that you now have?
Especially for me, it was, yeah, absolutely. Because before we had so many things to do, and I always said 100K is enough for a tour. Yeah, I don't want to go longer. And Stevie had some experience going longer before. I only did during an earlier Ironman I did on my own. But I always said, no, not more than 100K. And with COVID, it starts to change because you had so much time then, yeah. The weekend, everything was locked down. You couldn't meet your friends. So we just started doing 150K, doing an overnighter, doing this and that. And yes, especially for me, that was really a kick-off, a game changer then in a positive way, yeah.
I think it started with going longer, and then especially during COVID, and because you couldn't go on holiday, you couldn't even rent a hotel room and such things. So we just said, okay, so we're doing something, we're going somewhere, staying there overnight, and then coming back the next day. We didn't do much longer at that stage, just one night. In Germany, you have a good infrastructure. When you go into woods, you have quite a good infrastructure of huts. So you can actually just sleep in huts. So you don't even need a tent. So you can just put your airbed and your sleeping gear. You get your sleeping gear with you, and you can just sleep there and bivvy there overnight. That was the idea, and that was actually the starting point. And then we also watched a lot of videos from people doing ultra cycling. And so then we bought ourselves the gear. And so it all went on and on and on.
Yeah, and I guess the algorithm worked its way. You suggested more videos by people taking adventures on a bike, by going further, longer distances. Can I just say that hut system you're talking about in Germany sounds awesome. Do you have to book those, or are they just sort of in random places and they're just there free to use? How's that system work?
Well, there's no particular system. So these huts are not locked, so they don't have a door. They are usually open and they are free to use for everybody. They are more intended to stay for rest, yeah, like a picnic place where you stay during your hike and stay for an hour, or perhaps in the evening have your dinner there or something. They are not intended to stay overnight,
Or
but
shelter for rain,
or
especially.
shelter for rain, yeah. So, but that is a little bit extended use, I would say. But they are usually free for everybody. There's usually no registration or something. Yeah, it's not so always easy to find them. Yeah, there is a website having some of them registered. Also on Komoot, you can find some of those. Yeah, but it's pretty popular. Yeah, usually they are set up by local.
Forestry.
No, not the forestry. They
or hiking clubs. It
yeah,
depends.
something. Yeah, so they are setting that up to taking care and
Yeah.
And I wonder if it works similar in Australia, where I'm from, in the Snowy Mountains. We have the Kosciuszko Hut Association, and they are old stockman huts from when they used to drive cattle up in the mountains, and very similar to what you're saying there. So, in fact, in Australia, you'd nearly go as far as they're places to shelter in bad weather, but sometimes you might actually be more comfortable just pitching your tent and sleeping in a tent. Would the German ones be a bit that way?
Some are. Yeah, some are quite new, but some can be old. You don't know, because most of the time when you look them up on some sort of a digital map, you don't have pictures related to it. So it's a surprise when you don't know where you're going. It can be a good surprise, but it also can be sometimes a bad surprise.
yeah.
Especially when it's windy, and if the hut is like, they're mostly made of wood, if they're not so close by, these wooden things, the wind just blows through and it can be really cold.
There are some that are more or less only a roof, yeah, perhaps one wall in the back. Some have
It's
three
like
walls.
a pavilion, if you will.
Depends. So it's not really a hut. Yeah, it's more a shelter than. Yeah.
Going back a step, we talked about there was a colliding of new interests in terms of cycling, in that you were suddenly open to doing longer distances, you were open to traveling to different places by bike, and you also had this idea for ultra cycling in your mind. Did your longer rides then start gravitating to sort of longer trips away more for training purposes, for building up endurance and multiple days in a row with lots of kilometres? Or do you still think there's a part of you that was just happy to go far places and enjoy the sport from an outdoor recreation point of view?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, it's me, Bella from the show. I just wanted to let you know about something exciting. I have recently just created a new Facebook group named Seek Travel Ride, where if you are a fan of the show, you can join and we can actually bring this community more to life. It's a place where you can learn more about our guests, see more photos, chat about episodes in more detail, and maybe even pose some questions as well. It's also a place where you can share your own bicycle adventure journeys, whether you've got a photo or a blog or some videos that you want to share. Come online, say hi, join the Facebook group, and let's enjoy this community that we have built. We have a global audience here. People are listening from all around the world, and I think we can only thrive and get an even greater sense of wanderlust by sharing our experiences with each other and connecting. So get onto Facebook. I've provided a link in the show notes and you can join that community as well. Thank you. Now back to the show.
I think, well, Tom is more the competitive guy of us. So I'm more doing it for pleasure. I don't need an event to get myself moving. But it's also good to have like some sort of an ultra cycling event, for example, the Normandy Cat. If you know that you need to do 900k in 3 days, you need to do a little bit of training. But I probably would have done that only for pleasure. But I wasn't informing myself about ultra distance events. So he's always the researcher of the two of us. And he always comes up with the good ideas. Oh, we could do this and that. And I said, God, are you crazy? Doing 900k or even more in whatever time you have? No, I don't want to do that. And then I think about it a little bit, sleep a night over it or something. And then I said, well, why not? Why not putting myself into that competition zone?
Yeah, for the Normandy Cat, to be honest, I think it took me 2 to 3 months to convince her to register for that event. It's not a one night sleep, but yes, it's just true. Yeah. So we started in the beginning. It was just a pleasure just to try it out, and then of course you get that on YouTube. You get the videos and you get ideas. You hear podcasts from people doing bikepacking races, and yeah, there came the idea that I would like to try, and of course have Stevie with me.
Yeah.
It turned out a different way, yeah. So didn't work out the plan, but nevertheless, it gives so many impulses. And once we have been registered for the race, of course, there was the aspect of training came into play. Yeah, we said, okay, now we have to be a little bit more serious, try something out, go on a ride, yeah, do some training rides like starting at 10 in the evening.
Yeah, start into the night.
Start into the night, find a place to sleep in the dark, yeah, without having it chosen in advance or selected in advance. And
which is still a challenge when you don't know the places you end up.
That's something I haven't done yet, is actually wild camped, like found a wild camping spot in the dark. I guess if I was to put a silver lining on that, maybe it gives you the opportunity to wake up in some really amazing places that you didn't know. Open the zipper in the morning on the tent and go, oh, wow, this is what it looks like outside.
Yeah, we had that. But sometimes it was the other way around, though. So we thought we had found a super spot, and then we discovered, especially, I think it was the third last, we went to a hut in a wood in the Alsace in France, and we thought we had a lovely spot, and just Tom said something like, it's a little smelly here, isn't it? I said, well, maybe it smells a little like horses. And the next morning we discovered there's just that big, how do you call when you put like the horse poo away? How do you call this?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. We see them here in France as well, where they store all the manure.
Yeah.
Here in the farms, you see them storing them in big piles to then spray them out in the fields. Is that sort of like a stables and area there? So,
yeah.
Lovely. I thought you were going to say that you'd camp like right next to like a sewage treatment plant or something like that.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes the animal smells like, horses or cow manure. It's a bit agricultural, but actually the worst smell from that perspective, I think, is like pigs. I remember in Ireland, you could always tell when you were cycling past a piggery, like a pig farm.
Yeah.
This idea then for the sabbatical, 2 months away from work as adults in the middle of your career, whose idea was it? One of you was thinking, I need 2 months off, I'm going to do this, or like obviously there's planning as a couple to make sure that you can get the same amount of time off each, but was there always this grand idea that, I'm going to take 2 months and let's go on a massive bikepacking trip? Like, how did that idea come into being?
Yeah, I think it started with me. In 2019, I changed jobs. Yeah, so I quit my old job, looked for a new one, but I made sure that I had 2 months between those two jobs. So I had 2 months off. But that time, I wasn't able to go on a big trip. So I had to care for my son, who was still with me, need some support there, and we had other issues. Stevie didn't have so much of holidays, so I had 2 months off, and this was great as well. But there, the idea persists to having this again, not waiting for retirement or so to do it again, but saying, why not doing it in the job? So we have so many people who are taking off 2 months because they have to care for their small kids or have some other problems. That was not the issue. So I talked to Stevie, and last year I talked to my boss, and he was pretty much okay, yeah, saying, yeah, why not? If you want to do it, you're doing it a good job, go ahead. Yeah, and then we prepared for it and synchronized our days off and stuff like this. Yeah.
And then we got married last year October, and so I disguised that mini sabbatical a little bit into our honeymoon. So for me, it was nicer to explain that to my employer that I want to take 2 months off. They were okay with that as well, so no issues with that. The need to disguise it wasn't there, actually. It's just for me being so frank of just like asking 2 months off was a little bit, can I really do it? Can I leave my colleagues alone with all the work? But yeah, it went well.
Okay, 2 months off together to enjoy time together, free of other responsibilities, free of work responsibilities, free of any caring responsibilities with children or anything like that, I can understand. But was it always then the idea that it would be 2 months of bikepacking? Or initially was it just it would be great to have a nice long period of time off to just enjoy some recreation?
Well, I think that was pretty clear in the beginning.
Bikepacking was always on the agenda.
Yeah.
That was always the plan, to do 2 months of bikepacking. Yeah, definitely.
Very early down the road, we discussed sort of a road trip with the car, but it was pretty quickly replaced by the idea of doing the bike trip, bikepacking. Yeah. And again, YouTube is your friend. Yeah. You see other couples doing that, see what they experience, and say, okay. And yes, it is inspiration that you get there. And yeah, so it was clear, bikepacking. Yeah.
Yeah.
With limited gear.
So before this 2-month trip away, what was the longest bicycle bikepacking trip you'd taken?
From distance perspective, for me, it was the Normandy Cat. I went to Austria, to the Attersee within 5 days. That was actually my first bikepacking event. I did that on my own, but I stayed in B&Bs and hotels. I think that was in 2019.
18.
19.
Now, that was the time I thought you were crazy doing that.
Yeah, okay.
And then here, all of a sudden, fast forward a few years, and Tom's saying, hey, let's go away for 2 months.
For me, I did, as a student, I did 2 longer bicycle touring trips of 3 weeks. One to Norway and one to Finland, but this is almost 30 years ago now. In the new cycling world, I just went for 2 or 3 days.
You did go to Holland.
Yeah, but this was just
coast.
2 days.
Yeah, 2 days, but also 600k or something like that.
Yeah, sure, but just 2 days.
Actually, listeners, I must reveal that when Tom and Stevie were staying at our place here in the Pyrenees, we were talking about French boulangeries and pastries and how just anything you get there is amazing. I think, Tom, you revealed that you did a long ride one day just to go to the border, to go to a French boulangerie to have like a custard flan.
Yeah.
It was like 100 and something kilometers each way, wasn't it?
It's 125 to the French border, from the place where we live here. Yeah, you can just go there, go to the boulangerie, and then go back. So it's 250k, and then you are back in the afternoon. So that's pretty good. Yeah.
I'm sure you took some pastries away with you as well for the return journey. That deserves more than just one pastry.
I think it took some there, to go back.
And the French boulangeries, they made our day in the last 3 weeks. They were so marvelous.
Yeah.
Absolutely nice.
I'm still to come across a really bad one. Every now and then there's a pastry that maybe doesn't hit the high marks, but it's far from being bad. So then this trip, 2 months, you've got 2 months to play with. How did you devise what you would do in that time? Like, what goes through your mind in determining how far you want to travel, the places you want to see, whether your route will be fixed or flexible? How did this transpire?
Actually, what I just remember, we wanted to do the French Divide, which is sort of a mountain bike. It's a VTT, vélo tout terrain.
Vélo tout terrain.
So either gravel or mountain bike trip. It's pre-planned, and I think it's 14 days. That was the basic idea. Yeah. So we had France in the itinerary. So that was clear we would go to France. And then we thought, okay, France, we have so much time. We can do more than just France. And we can do more than that race. And then we skipped the idea of doing a race, and then we just freely planned a route. Then you came up with your ideas as well.
Yeah, so it was clear that we wanted to start from home and want to arrive home on our own wheels, so to say, on the bikes, not to take a train or something or to fly. And then we put some ideas together. Where do you want to go? And it turned out that it will be Western Europe somehow, because we want to have it not too exotic also, so that we stayed in countries that we know, and we know that it's easy to handling. So it was planned as a fun trip, more or less, to enjoy the time, not being in a race mode, not being too difficult in the organizational and stuff and so on. And so we put some elements together.
Yeah.
Put elements of friends we would like to visit in, put countries that we would like to visit in, and then the route growed.
So the initial idea was actually to go to France first, because that's short at hand, because we're like in a day we're in France. But then we thought about it again, because it was clear we had from mid-July until mid-September, and France can get pretty hot in July, August. So we thought we just switch the direction and go to France on our way back to home. So we actually started west first, and we thought, oh, we want to go to England, Wales, Ireland. And we thought this might be a nicer place to go to in July, August, because the weather is nicer there. So it's drier, sunnier. Well, turns out it was not, but that's a different story again.
Yeah.
For my listeners, if you could see my face, because I know what's transpired here. And actually, Tom, you brought it up the best, and you said you'd love to go to Ireland in the summer one time to see what it's like.
It didn't feel like summer at all being there
Yeah.
in August, unfortunately. Yeah, but this is how it is. But nevertheless, on the planning, we did a lot of planning in advance, in Komoot, clicking things and seeing how far it is. Yeah, you have to figure out what does it mean going to Ireland in sorts of kilometers and days and stuff like this. Yeah, was a lot of preparation done.
And when we planned, we thought we would be able to cope more distance than we actually did. We thought we would be faster than we were, because we did not. We took our gravel bikes because we wanted to have the comfort of the thicker tires. And well, with that and with all the luggage that we had, we didn't even make it 20k as an average, but rather 15 or 16k as an average. And so like the distances were not as big as we thought they were. That was an experience on the way, so that we had to cut down. Well, no, we didn't even really had to cut down, but we just needed to reset ourselves, reset our minds that we can go 150k easily. We did have several days where we did go far, but 150k is not like, let's go 150. It's nothing.
Are you happy with the decision to take the gravel bikes as opposed to road bikes for this trip?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm 1,000,000% on board with this.
The comfort of the thicker tires is just amazing.
And the flexibility. When the road gets bad, or you're going on a gravel road, you don't have to worry, just continue. Yeah, that decision was great.
There's no stress from that. And actually, quickly to my listeners, something which I found out that both Tom and Stevie had done with their gravel bike setup, which I thought was really smart, and if it's something I'm going to take on board, especially if you're traveling with a couple, is that the componentry, Tom, you said when you built your bike up, you made sure it was the same components that Stevie had.
Yeah.
Because then that meant that on future trips, that would mean that if you have a mechanical, you've got one set of spares that can service both bikes. And I thought that was really, really smart.
Yeah, that was really good. So I bought a bike, and then Tom built his own bike. And so my bike was more or less the masterpiece. And
so we had the same drivetrain, the same brakes, the same tire size, and all that, so that you don't have to have two separate sets of spare parts, for example. That was helpful, yeah. So then you can reduce the number of spare parts that you take with you.
Yeah. We both decided then to use the SRAM stuff, which were meant to be very good. We were using the SRAM AXS Eagle because we wanted to have big gears for the mountains with the luggage. And that was actually the main decision for me to buy the bike in the setup that I have now. Have the small, but the big rings to go up the mountains. And that was absolutely worth it. I was using that big ring so very often.
How awesome are great climbing gears. It's something that we did for our trip across the Pyrenees, was put big climbing cassettes on our bikes. And it's funny, I remember distinctly when we put them on and we said, when we get back, we'll take these off. Because you look at it, it's such a big dinner plate on the back wheel, isn't it? But you know what? Probably already mentioned this in previous episodes, but I think it was within the first few hours of that tour, I said to Steve, this is never coming off my bike. It's just like, you can never have enough gears. And, the thing is, you'll be using that little spinny, the big granny gear, as we call it in Australia, the one that allows you to go up the steepest of gradients, and you'll still get to a mountain where you shift, hoping that there's even a smaller gear to use still.
Even from time to time, when you're in the smallest gear, you still test if there's another one.
I know. It's like the Hail Mary shift. Actually, my Steve still talks about this miracle that occurred when he was doing a climb, and then he looked down and he was like, oh my gosh, I've actually got 2 gears. It was like, wow, that never happens. I can't remember if you were single chainring or double chainring.
We have a 1x setup both, yeah. So we're just one ring in the front, 14 tooth, and the big cassette in the end. And that was good. That was sufficient, yeah.
Well, then actually, I must ask, in those moments when you're looking for another gear, does your mind move to like your road bike mind and do you actually try and find the little ring? Like, do you actually try for a shift at the front?
We were more thinking of throwing away our luggage. Getting rid of these extra kilos of the saddlebag.
But actually, so I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but trailing back to a thought I had earlier, Stevie, where you were talking about you had to reset expectations because the distances that you thought you would be traveling just weren't meeting up with the reality. And it was more to do not just with the way your bikes were set up and with the load you're taking, but also the weather. I think it takes me back to something, and it's been a lesson learnt for me, is trying to plan my days not so much by distance, but by how many hours I want to be cycling for, because you then, a couple of days into your trip, you really see what's possible with your bike setup and the realistic speed you can travel. And so then from a route planning perspective, if you know you're averaging 16, 17 kilometers an hour and you say, well, I think I can do 7 hours today or 8 hours or 6 hours or 4 hours, whatever it is, you can then start to get to realistic distances as well. Do you feel that that's the mental shift that you were making then?
Yeah, it got also to do with having or taking proper breaks, because we tried to sit down during lunchtime, and I think I underestimated the time it actually takes. So once you sit there and if you order food, you're sitting there for an hour or maybe even an hour and a half. And I think, well, one thing was that we're not as quick, but also like we did take bigger breaks because we weren't in a race. It actually took me some days to get me out of race mode because I was listening to the Transcontinental podcast. The Transcontinental race was on by the time we were actually taking off. And I was like, it's just 7:00. We can go. It's at least 2 more hours of brightness, so we can go further. And it took me some time to get me off that race mode.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a misunderstanding. I did a little bit more of counting and calculating in before, like often. So I know I had a planning, I had a basic route, and I know we had to go some 100K a day. That was, I thought would be easy, but I counted one rest day per week. So I just counted 6 days of cycling per week and one rest day. So, and I told her, but she didn't listen to the rest day. So he was always pushing, Stevie was always pushing to do the 100K and 110, and we have to do it today. And because, so what are you doing here? What? We don't have to do 100K a day. It's 85 and if we don't make it, we take the train. Don't worry. That was a little bit, in the first days where we had to do that mental reset, saying, oh, no. We just want to have fun. We are not racing this year. Yeah, let's do it slowly. And then, you are right. And it's best to count the hours. Yeah, just use the new average, have a little bit of look on the elevation you have to climb, and then take a decision, and then it's good.
Yeah.
So for us, it was between 5 and maximum 8 hours of riding a day. That was, in the end, what felt good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess something you were talking about, Stevie, how all of a sudden you don't realize how much time it takes just to sit down and have a proper lunch in the middle of the day. Something that reminds me of is I didn't realize until my Stevie and me, my husband and I, when we did our trip across the Pyrenees, just how long it actually took us to pack everything up and get going.
Oh my God, yeah.
We had grand plans when we did our trip that we would be up really early in the morning to beat really hot weather, and we would be out on the bikes by 7:30.
Sounds familiar.
If we got on the bikes before 8:30 or 8:45, that was amazing. It just takes you longer than you think. Now, I imagine that all of a sudden you develop great routines and you got into a packing rhythm, and all of a sudden you know how things are going to fit in your bags and stuff. Did you find that happened for you? And I guess also, just a quick extra question for you there. This is the first time you've done a trip that lasts 2 months. What extra things are you packing for a trip that goes this long as opposed to a trip that might last a long weekend?
Yeah, so when you're going for a weekend, you normally pick a weekend when the weather is nice. So when you tend to not have to pack or take your rain gear with you. However, when you're going for a long distance trip, and also when you need to pack a little bit, well, warmer clothes, for example, when you know so you have a bandwidth of temperature you need to cover for. And so you think of intelligent packing. So the onion principle, like take layers instead of just taking thick clothes. So that was one thing to consider. And of course, we had to pack the rain gear. That is the only change, actually, you need to consider. And the tent.
Quickly, when you packed that rain gear in Frankfurt, did you have any inkling of how much you would need to be using that? I feel like that was your most valuable item.
Oh, yeah.
My idea was to pack that rain gear in the right fork bag that I had, and to take that bag as it is all the way around and unpack it like it had packed it on the first day again in Frankfurt. That was my idea originally, because
Sky's always blue in our dreams, isn't it?
But
that fork bag must have been empty for quite some time, Tom, on this trip.
I was personally much more worried about the heat, because we had very hot weeks already in June here in Germany this year, where it was really 35 plus degrees, and say, oh, when this is so hot all that day, that will not be fun. Yeah, so I didn't worry much about the rain. Yeah, but coming back to your question about the packing routine, it turned out that there is some routine, but it still takes time. Yeah, because when the bikepacking mode, you have very little room to store your things, so you have to pack it carefully. It's not just throwing it in and go. No, you have to pack everything. Any piece you put out, you have to put it in again. So it's still it simply takes time, and I think minimum it was 19 minutes or something to get ready.
90, yeah. 1.5 hours, yeah.
Yeah, so that was more or less, and we couldn't speed up a little during the tour, but not that much.
Yeah, and especially when you had a change in weather, you also had a change in packing routine, because then you needed your rain gear to switch other things into the places where you had actually stored your rain stuff. And so that was a turnaround again and again. We used rain gear quite a lot after 10 days, I'd say.
After the first week, it starts.
So we experienced the first thunderstorm in Belgium, but that was maybe more or less it. But then we had it big time on England and Wales, and Ireland was rain big time. And there was also nice rainy weather in the Pyrenees, and wind and cold. And
I know when you were here, you did send some stuff home, but was there anything that made it the whole way that you reflect back on and go, why did I bring this? Or what did you pack that you would never pack again?
So we had approximately 10 kilos of gear each. So that was our limit that we would like to bring with. You have to limit yourself. Yeah, you have to think what you will carry. And there's a piece, I brought some calves with me to wear it. I didn't wear it, I sent it back. Or there was a third triathlon shorts that I bring with me for swimming and stuff. That is something I wouldn't need, but it wasn't that much, to be fair. So perhaps half of a kilo or something, or not even.
Well, when I do something like that the next time, I don't bring another bigger towel with me. I probably just neglect the third knicker and the third bra. And what I don't need is the wind jacket, because you obviously have the rain jacket with you. So you don't need the wind jacket. So I had 2 jackets with me, and I didn't use the wind jacket. One thing I would bring, though, that I missed, that I actually bought myself in Ireland, would be a pair of tights. Because it was so cold, it was cloudy, and it was cold, and it was windy. And I just bought myself a pair of thicker tights, and I put them over my bib shorts. It looked totally stupid, but I didn't care. But it gave me the warmth that I needed. So I would bring it the next time. It doesn't take much space, and it weighs nearly nothing, but the effect is great.
Actually, Tom, I remember when we were at the top of the Tourmalet and you were at the store, you treated yourself to a pair of leg warmers.
Yeah.
I was so envious of those leg warmers at the bottom of that descent. I have to say, we were freezing. For the benefit of our listeners, I mentioned in our intro, there were 8 countries you visited. I'm going to see if I can get the order right. So obviously Germany, Luxembourg, Belgium, England, Wales, Ireland, Spain, France, and then obviously back to Germany.
Correct.
That's quite a trip. There were then 3 ferries in this trip.
Bigger ones, yeah.
Yeah, so
one mega ferry. We're going to get into the details of that, the ferry that you took to Bilbao from Ireland.
Yeah.
What storm system hit Ireland during this ferry trip?
She was called Mary. Storm Mary was hitting Ireland big time.
Bless you, Mary.
Yeah. So the ferry left at a Friday night, 11 o'clock. And they actually put out that warning to be inside by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the latest. So we decided, okay, we're stopping for the day. We're going to a pub and drink until we can get on the ferry, actually. And so that's what we did. And
we are in Ireland, yeah, just for the listeners. So
yeah, we're in Ireland.
The ferry is leaving from Rosslare Island, from the southeast point coast,
yeah,
heading to Bilbao in Spain, northern Spain. So that's an amazing ferry line that we discovered, which makes that trip possible, yeah.
Yeah.
So perhaps just an intro, and now
the
storm meter.
Yeah, and it was raining big time, and it got windier and windier and windier over the afternoon until we had to leave. We put on our rain gear and went down to the ferry terminal, and that got us quite wet, and it was only 2K to go. And luckily, in the end, we were able to sit inside until the very last minute, and together with a motorcyclist and some other few cyclists, I think there were about 8 cyclists or something, we could go as the very first people to board that ferry. We were able to go on the ferry and tie our bikes downstairs and go up into our cabins. So that was the good thing.
But then it was really, really super stormy, yeah. So the ferry left at 11:30 something, and then really the storm kicked in, and we just stayed in our cabin and go to bed, and the ship was rolling and was shivering, and it was noisy. So that was really somehow scary also.
Oh, yeah.
And then we experienced that.
The waves are really breaking on the ship, and the ship was trembling. So it was really scary to feel the power of nature so close by. And you feel quite vulnerable when you're on a ship on the open sea, and you look out of the window and it's just blackness and white gas and white foam on the wave tops, and that was scary.
You're describing my worst nightmare as someone who gets seasick, because I did the crossing from Ireland to France, although admittedly we were going from Dublin to Cherbourg, so nowhere near as long as trip. I think our ferry was 18 hours or 18 and a half hours. I think your ferry was like almost double that, wasn't it? Like
32 hours was it?
Yeah, you're describing a nightmare, like especially just the idea that there's blackness and white foam.
Yeah, that was quite nasty.
What do you do to get yourself through that? Like, do you distraction techniques? Do you try and fall asleep? Do you go into like breathing techniques?
I was trying to fall asleep, but you couldn't. Because you were sort of rolling and shaking in your bed, like you not as much as that you fall out of your bed, but you just can't stand still or lie still, because the waves, they keep shaking. And then all of a sudden, all that we put on the windowsill was flying through the cabin, because there was one big wave hitting, and it was like this boom. Okay, right awake.
When you land in Bilbao, I remember texting you saying, how is it? You must be so happy to be on land. And I think you said, it still feels like we're at sea.
It took a few hours before the ground stayed still. Well, the morning wasn't too bad anymore.
No, it gets calmer. She gets calmer after the night.
Yeah.
So
there was actually 2 nights, and the second night was quite good. So we arrived and the sea was quite still. So I think the second night, we were exhausted though, but the second night was quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good that we were so tired because of the first night, so we could sleep properly the second night. And then we entered a new world. That was great.
Spain. But I'm just thinking, like, that was the third trip, because your other 2 trips, did you go over from...
We took the ferry from Dunkirk to Dover, so that was to cross the channel. So we decided to go to Dunkirk because we thought the harbor is a little bit smaller than the one in Calais, and it might be easier to do the boarding, and that was really without any problem then. Yeah. Although the British controlled our passports, I think 3 times. So
yeah, thanks to the Brexit. Yeah.
Super precise, yeah. That was the first ferry, and the second ferry was then from Holyhead to Dover. So when we
No,
crossed
Dublin.
Wales,
Holyhead to
Dublin.
Dublin.
So sorry, Dublin, yeah. And that was
It was
very. Both
three
of them
hours
were
maybe.
pretty calm.
Yeah, that was okay.
Yeah.
Dunkirk was nice because it was drizzling in Dunkirk and was quite grey. And when we arrived in Dover, you could see those white cliffs from far away because it cleared up. And it was very windy then, but it was sunny and the sea was blue and you could see these white cliffs, and that was amazing. It was really nice.
I know we've spent a lot of time already discussing inclement weather, and I know your time in Ireland around the Wild Atlantic Way was full of grey clouds, and perhaps so was Wales, maybe as well, and England. But notwithstanding that, you both visited some absolutely jaw dropping scenery and some spectacular places. With your route planning, what sort of places were you looking forward to from a natural beauty perspective? Were there places that, I really want to see this, or were you sort of open-minded about, well, we'll just see where the route takes us and discover them sort of haphazardly?
Yeah, well, it was a little bit of everything. So I said, I do not want to take off tourist highlights. Yeah, that was not the plan that I had, because tourist highlights are usually crowded, especially in summer. So we skipped many of those, yeah, and simply want to go on the countryside, see the country, see the people, meet the people, rather than going from one highlight to the other, rather traveling. Yeah, and that turned out pretty good. We had, of course, some of the highlights, but not too many. And so I just didn't have too much expectations or targets or goals to go, but just want to travel. Yeah? And this turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think especially Wales was quite a surprise because, well, it's got a reason it's also green there. But apart from the rain that we had, it somehow belongs to those countries because like it's meant to rain a lot and it did rain a lot. But still, it's got a certain beauty even in the rain when you're like up on a mountain. You see it's all like foggy and mystic, and you drive through a forest and there's this mist hanging in the mossy trees, and it's still very nice and still good to go, and good that we were there. I don't regret a single decision that we made, even if that decision had led us into pouring rain.
Yeah, but you never know that. But what I was really amazed of was the friendness of the people. Yeah,
Friendliness, yeah.
friendliness. You go into the hotel. You have booked a hotel via Booking.com. You go in there. You are soaking wet. You're dripping on the floor. You are dirty. But nevertheless, people are friendly and showing the room and taking full care for the bikes and having a shed to store them and stuff. That was really amazing, and it was
That was
marvelous. And it was in most of the countries around the world, we experienced that friendliness from the
yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. We must admit, though, in the rainy days, we booked ourselves a hotel. We didn't stay in the tent. So we thought that's not nice to put up the tent in the pouring rain, lie in the bed wet, never getting the chance to dry a little bit. And no, we didn't want that. So we booked hotels.
Wild camping is something you did do consistently, though. You wild camped in every country you were in?
Yeah. Yeah.
How was that experience? And did you notice differences in finding places, or how was it in all the countries? Were there some countries where it was easier? Were there some where it was more difficult?
Oh, yeah, we had the biggest difficulties we had in Ireland, I'd say. That was even worse than, well, maybe Wales, England was, because like pretty much every square meter of ground there's either a fence or a wall or like something,
Hedge.
a hedge. You can't just go any place you want. Like on the continent, it's much more wider. You don't have that many fences, especially even the forests are fenced in. Everything is fenced in Great Britain, Ireland. That brought the difficulty of not finding proper camping spots, and they don't have this hut system that we have here. So you just don't go into a forest and you have like one or two huts there you can go to. We tried to find, it was quite difficult to find good spots.
And good spots means I'm have some criteria. So I say I will not camp on private land. Yeah, just always looking for some sort of public land. I don't want to have this spot too open, too close to a road or too close to houses or so. So it should be a little bit remote, it should be a little bit covered. And of course, it should be somehow nice, yeah, that you have at least a nice view or at least a little bit of grass and so on. And those types of spots were really limited in the UK and in Ireland.
And remember, we were looking for a place to put our tent on, so it needs to be flat. And so if you're in the hills and find some even spot for your tent is not so easy.
But nevertheless, we found some incredible spots in Ireland. Yeah, so we stayed one night at the beach, sandy beach, which was not so good for the chains on our bikes, but I loved it. We had some nights on the cliffs, where we have a magnificent view over the ocean. Yeah, you are completely alone there. And this is still remarkable memories that I have, and which we are looking for and which makes this wild camping fun. And of course, we try to be as stealthy as possible. So pitch up the tent pretty late when it gets dark, put together quickly early so that we do not disturb people. And of course, don't leave any traces, any rubbish or something.
Take all your rubbish and the rubbish that's already there, take it all with you. So no one can be angry at you. So
so this is a little bit the rule set that we have, or the philosophy that we have trying to find a wild camping spot. But it's a little bit of effort, but you're often rewarded with really incredible spots to stay overnight. Yeah.
And magic moments then in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, not to be unfair to you, Stevie, but Tom, perhaps you took the morning moments a little bit more than Stevie, because Stevie, you like a bit of a sleep in.
Oh, yeah. I'm more a night person or evening person. However, I discovered that I need a lot of sleep. So I think I slept like 8 or 9, even 9 hours sometimes. But I did find some good sleep in the tent, actually. I thought it would be a little bit unsettled, but it was no problem. Like after the first 2 nights in the tent, it was all good.
Yeah, I'm the only early bird here for the two of us. So I seen quite some sunsets. Sunrises as well. We saw them together.
Sunsets we can watch together, but sunrises was more Tom's
my game.
thing.
Tom, did you ever wake Stevie up for a magic sunrise?
Yeah, once. Right at the end of the trip, there we stayed on the mountain of the Planche Belfi in the Vosges. That was 1,100 meters on top, and that was a 300-degree panorama that we had there, and there I woke you up.
Yeah, and I was very thankful for that because it was a beautiful morning. Yeah. It was a beautiful sunset in the evening, but also a beautiful and red sunrise. Amazing.
Yeah.
I need to ask a question here quickly then, because your route through Ireland took in most of the Wild Atlantic Way, or a lot of it anyway.
Yeah.
I know there's an ultra race, the Transatlantic Way. Having your experience there with rain and cold and wind and grey days, were either of you thinking about what it would be like if you were doing that in an ultra fashion?
No. No, definitely no. We haven't discussed that, but we have discussed our plans for the next year. Well, we're not finished yet with just discussing the plans, but that ultra race is not part of the discussion. There are others which are, but this, no.
I would say this route has the correct name. So it's Wild Atlantic. It is wild, and it's wild by many means, not only the weather, but also the climbs and the steep climbs that you have to do, and the lots of elevation gaining. So I would say I watched some videos on this race. I would not recommend to do it for the first time. I think this is for advanced bikepacking guys. And we're looking for something easier.
I think you might get a little intrigued because it's one of these long distance cycling routes, the Eurovelo 1, which I believe goes from Portugal along the west coast, Portugal, and then like Ireland, Scotland, and then it goes up to Russia. And people might think that this is sort of an easy peasy road, but it's just not. It is very hilly, and you shouldn't underestimate that.
But it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
If you want to go there, yeah, that they have plenty of those signs everywhere. You don't need
Yeah, you
even
don't need to lose your way.
GPS. Yeah,
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 you can never
just
lose
cycle
your
it,
way.
just using the signs that
Yeah,
are there. So
yeah,
But yeah, easy peasy is definitely not how I would describe it either. Like I had purely just I think 2 or 3 days on the Wild Atlantic Way when we were in Ireland. Unfortunately, our time in Ireland coincided with COVID lockdown, so I feel like I lived there for 18 months purely in existence only. I didn't really get to experience Ireland properly, and I think, to be honest with you, that's why there's part of my mind that always thinks about that one because.
yeah,
But I feel perhaps maybe similar to yourselves, Tom and Stevie, that maybe that's the one that I go and do as a pleasure cycle tour, not
yeah,
a race.
yeah.
And I don't want to get bogged down too much in the weather. We were talking before we press record, and I asked, did you tally the days of wet weather that you had on this trip? And I think, Tom, you said it could have been close to a whole month, so half of your trip in the rain. How did you stay motivated? You mentioned your strategy there that you had given yourselves permission to sleep indoors, not in the tent when it's rainy, but still putting on wet weather gear to go and cycle perpetually in the rain after you've just had it the day before and looking at the forecast and it's not great. How did you keep it fresh? And was there ever a point in your trip where you just wanted it to be over?
no, not really. So I think we are good in motivating ourselves, so or each other, yeah.
Yeah.
So get motivated yourself, motivate each other. If one of us is in a bad mood, the other can help. So we never had a situation where both of us were in a bad mood, so that we said, okay, now let's stop it. We don't know. What is a good trick, if possible, is not to start in the rain. So when you have the chance to stay 1 or 2 hours in the tent or in the hotel, let the rain pass and then start in the dry. That's a good
Yeah.
trick, yeah, so that you're not wet right from the beginning and stuff like these. If you're bad mood, well, go for a drink, go for some sweets, go for a chocolate bar.
Allow yourself anything you want.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think this
That
is a
makes
good
it.
trip. I think also for me it's important when it's cold and rainy that I have enough food so that I continue eating. Yeah, so that helps me staying energetic and continue. But yeah,
For me, I think it's enough if I know, okay, it's gonna be a little uncomfy now, but in like 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, I can take a warm shower. I can put off all these dirty and wet clothes, and then this is it. And there's better times to come. That was my motivation.
That you can get through this, it's not forever.
Exactly.
Can I ask, with the rain gear that you took, would you take them for another trip? Like, were you happy with how they performed?
Yeah, more or less, yes. So, well, I think every rain gear has its limit, no matter what the brand is or how much you paid for it. Like, if you're in a constant rain, the best rain jacket or the best rain pants is wet at some stage. The worst thing though is when the rain tingles down your shins into your shoes. When the feet are really, really soaking wet, you can't stay warm anymore. This is an issue then. But that didn't happen to us so often. I'd
no.
say that was just like maybe once or twice while we were actually quite cold. So no big of an issue during our trip there.
Yeah, I would not overrate the rain gear that you bring because as Stevie said, so they have that advantage. I only had a short rain pants to pull over. I didn't have long ones. This turns out to be okay for most of the days, yeah, except for 1 or 2 perhaps, yeah.
Like you said, when you plan a trip, you always plan it with blue sky and sunshine, right?
Yeah, like always, yeah.
Yeah.
That fork bag was meant to be unpacked, never touched, remember?
Yeah. But we had other weather as well. So we had a lot of sun and we had a lot of sunbathing. And the second part of our trip, it actually contained one bath in one stream or canal each day, to be honest, for the last at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks rather.
Yeah.
So it was quite warm. At some stages, we had to stop because it was so hot. So we had 40 degrees. But most of the time it was quite nice. And even we had it really hot. We found a nice place to stay like 1 or 2 hours for lunchtime, midday when it's the hottest. And we had some nice stream we could sit at or go in. and bathe, and that was really nice.
I think I recall it might have even been the day before you arrived at our place. You made the smart decision to climb at nighttime. I think it was the Col de Marie Blanc, because it was so hot. It was ridiculously hot. I think it was nearly reaching 40 degrees that day.
Yeah.
I cannot fathom climbing the Marie Blanc in 40 degrees. I think it was the smartest decision you made.
Yeah.
You camped on the Marie Blanc in the end, or close to it, didn't you? Like, you camped up at the summit?
Yes, yes. So we did that. That was one of the days we stayed like 2 or 3 hours even around lunchtime under a tree by a river, which was actually freezing. The water was really, really, really cold. It was sort of a mountain river that just came from the Pyrenees. We stayed there for 2 or 3 hours, and then we ran into the evening, but we had properly eaten. We had enough water, because water supply in France is absolutely fantastic, because at every single little village you find some drinking water fountain where you can fill up your bottles. Absolutely gorgeous. And then we ended up being at the Marie Blanc at, well, maybe
Started
10
at 9
or 9.
9 started.
Maybe rather 9. It was a little bright still, but until we went to the top, it was pitch dark. And then we just put up the tent on the summit. There were people in a little bus staying there, sleeping there. There was another tent. We just discovered that the next morning. And there was us, and that was absolutely gorgeous. It was so beautiful there.
What a great strategy there for dealing with the heat. And again, it goes to that flexibility that you've given yourselves as well, and that you didn't need to always be at a set place at the end of the day. And I guess that's the flexibility that wild camping gives you as well.
Absolutely.
Conversely, were there times also where you would have felt really great, so you kept riding longer maybe? Or
yeah,
when we're talking about finding wild camping places in the dark, but did you ever find a spot earlier than you may initially have thought actually this is going to be a good place to stay, we should stop here?
Yeah, that happens quite often. You are traveling and you see a lot of nice places, picnic areas right beside a small river where you said, oh, well, how beautiful is that to stay, but then it's 4 in the afternoon and you want to continue cycling. And this happens quite often. And sometimes you see dozens of good places during the day, and then it gets evening and nothing shows up again. Yeah, this is frustrating, of course, but this is part of the game. Yeah, and this makes it also a little bit of fun. I think in the end of the trip, or the second half of the trip, we intended to stop earlier. We tried to stop at 8 latest, yeah, so that we also can enjoy the sunset, not on the bike.
Ideally showered. Well, when you wild camp, you can't shower, of course. Well, the shower was the rivers. We went to the river, and that was the replacement of a shower. We were like 3 nights we were wild camping, and then the 4th night we went to camping ground again, because we had to get our electrical stuff loaded up again, because we had the mobile phones, we had the Wahoos, we had a GoPro, we had the lights, and we needed the lights. Like we noticed the change in brightness, because like evenings were getting shorter the longer the trip lasted, so we had to use the lights more often. Yeah, every 4th night we had to recharge everything. That was the limiting factor, actually.
Yeah. So which country had the best campgrounds?
France.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Actually, France is, it's got a lot of campgrounds, and you don't even need them, because there are so great wild camping spots as well.
Yeah, so France had the best infrastructure and the best selection of campgrounds. We didn't camp often on campgrounds, perhaps, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times.
Yeah.
Not that much. Well, this experience is pretty limited. So we had some campgrounds in Ireland, one in Belgium, and one in England, I think. So that's more or less it. Yeah. So
that English campground was like a golf spot.
No, it wasn't. It felt like one.
It was like the green of a golf course.
Because
like the grass was so absolutely thick and green and
perfect
for playing golf. That was crazy. When we left Frankfurt in mid-July, everything was totally burnt and dry. And when we returned, everything was nice and green and lush again.
That would have been something really nice to come back to, actually. Like leaving something that's been scorched and coming back to it being nourished and enriched again.
Yeah, that was a good experience because when we had sort of the rainy weather, it rained a lot in Germany too. So the garden wasn't burned. So it was rather the opposite. It was a little jungle when we came back.
He was ready for the sabbatical and the bikes to be over. He needed another sabbatical of landscaping to come.
Exactly.
What about mechanicals then? I know that you had a pretty bad mechanical. I think you were possibly dealing with before you arrived at my place here in the Pyrenees, but you were able to get it sorted in the Pyrenees. Do you want to talk about that a bit, Stevie?
Well, that wasn't the first mechanical that we had, but you're right. This was probably the worst because, as I said, we have that SRAM Eagle AXS derailleur. And for whatever reason, a few days before we came to your place, it stopped working and wanted a firmware update. So I did it. It didn't work again. And then I just, like after half an hour or something, it suddenly worked for whatever reason. It worked again and it worked for the whole day. And so I thought, okay, done. The next day, same thing. And I thought, no, this is not nice. And then at your place, we had the bikes both brought to that bike shop to get the brake pads replaced. And just after I left that bike shop, that same thing happened again, and the shifter wasn't working again. So then I brought the bike back to the bike shop, and they did whatever they could. They connected it to the computer, tried to find an error message, couldn't find it, charged the batteries from the shifters, did a firmware update on everything again, but that didn't help. And luckily, in the end, I had to buy a new derailleur. And that was the pleasure of leaving another 400 euros there. But I was lucky that they had this spare part. Otherwise, I don't know what happened. We would have been in the Pyrenees still. I don't know. Bike away or bike broken, holiday over. End of story. This is it. When you're on a bikepacking trip and something happens to you like that. So this is it. You can go home. You can buy a train ticket and go home. And I was so thankful that this bike shop had all the spare parts that we needed. But we had more mechanicals. And maybe you want to talk about that.
We had also some problems with the brakes, so that the brakes got locked and didn't unlock again. So the disc brakes, pretty new, but nevertheless needed a lot of maintenance, which I couldn't do with the tools I brought with me. Usually I do everything on my own, but it was so nasty blocked that, well, I couldn't do it. So we had to go to a bike shop already in Belgium. So that was the first encounter with the brakes. Once again in Ireland and then in the Pyrenees. So we had to ask for help at bike shops. And again, people have been super friendly. So here in Germany, it may happen when you ask for help in a bike shop, they say, yeah, you can come back in 2 weeks, then we have time. And when we showed up at a bike shop, they immediately, if they could, took the bike, put it on a repair stand and got it fixed so that we kept going. And that's a nice experience when people are so friendly, and then often they're asking, where are you going? Where are you coming from? And then you have immediately a nice, and that was good. So, and of course we had some tire punctures as well.
The longer the trip lasted, the thinner the tires were, the more flat tires we had.
5,500 kilometers, you'd nearly wear a tire out.
Yeah,
they're gone. Yeah. They're done. Well, at least the rear tires are. My rear tire is sort of squared now. It's not round anymore. It's more squared.
And it's super thin.
Yeah. We actually experienced some problems due to the wet weather we went into with our light. So the rear light is always like in the spray from the road. So your rear light and my rear light, we were having the same rear light. They just completely stopped working, and then we got new ones. And we also got a new front light, which stopped working as well.
Yeah.
They should at least, well, if you throw them into the water, okay, different story. I can understand when the lamp breaks and doesn't work anymore. But like with the spray water, they all have these, they're USB chargeable. But they all have these rubber things you can put on the USB charger. So they should be at least waterproof to a certain stage. But they're not.
Water resistant, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was a disappointing thing because we discovered that when you were here as well.
Yeah.
I feel like we discovered a lot while you were in the Pyrenees. But anyway, I remember that, and I remember because you had bought these in Ireland as well, and I think, Tom, it was something you said, you think in Ireland they've got the wettest of weather, they would have stuff that lasts for this type of weather, but not a good experience to have. Quickly then, what country would you reflect back on and feel you had the best experience from a cycling perspective? And just in terms of great place to ride, set up for cyclists, friendly drivers, those sort of things.
Oh, a country that I would reward a golden medal would be the Spanish people. They just don't overtake you if they can't go on the opposite side of the road. So they're the most patient drivers, even more patient than the French drivers, who are great as well. But they're even more friendly. But the French drivers, though, they just roll down the window and they cheer you up and they say allez, allez, and bonne chance and bonne route, and they wish you all the best. This is really nice. You wouldn't expect that or experience that in Germany. And we actually, another good thing is we got honked at just once during a whole trip. And that was in the Vosges, and that was a German driver, whatever.
But also the people, the drivers in the UK and Ireland were also super friendly. As long as you stay on small roads, the larger roads were a little bit unpleasant when they're going too fast, But really, I wouldn't rate one of the countries on the top. Surprisingly good experience with drivers waiting, letting us pass by, being patient.
Yeah, driving with 7K after you, behind you when you're going uphill.
And so on. So no, that wouldn't complain.
I want to talk about mountains quickly because you came to the Pyrenees, you started climbing some big mountains. Unfortunately, we gave you some mountain weather as well. You had some heat waves and then you had some rain. I know we climbed the Tourmalet together, which might have been your highest mountain pass of this trip.
Yeah, definitely.
Far.
We had some epic weather that day. But how did you enjoy the experience, not just in the Pyrenees, because the Pyrenees and the Massif Central, and then you went through the Vosges, and I know Ireland and Wales, they may not have mountains that last, 15 kilometres, but they're certainly hilly terrain. How did you both enjoy it when the road went uphill and downhill?
Well, I like it a lot. I do not like the flat country because we did a lot of driving by canals and rivers, and I was looking forward to have some climbing again because I like going up, having a view, and then I like descending. I really love descending. And actually, you were mentioning the Massif Central. We did go over the Pas de Pérol, it's called, I believe. It's the Puy-Marie, which is a big volcano, and it's got a climb which lasts like 23K, but the descent is the same length. And we were there and it was beautiful, late afternoon light, and just like descending forever. It felt like forever. I think we went down like for 2 hours or so.
I'm not sure, yeah.
A little bit
Then it was
in
really
between,
rolling down.
and it was just beautiful. And I really like this.
Yeah, I like climbing as well. So, but I'm also good going flat some days. So we had almost on everyday climbs. I think we have 5 days or so where we had flat terrain, completely flat, and the rest was climbing.
Yeah.
And sometimes, it gets exhausting, I would say. And especially, I would say sometimes the hilly parts are more painful because they are short, but they're often steep, super steep, where even the big ring does not help. And so we were looking forward to do the Pyrenees, to do the only real mountain passes that we had in our tour, and we did alpine passes already in the past. We went to Switzerland, we went to Austria for the big passes, for the Stelvio in South Tyrol and stuff. So we did a lot of mountain passes already, and the Pyrenees were the only real mountain passes that we had. So that was really also a highlight from the tour. But yes, the rest of the tour was pretty hilly,
Yeah.
Did a lot of elevation gain.
Yeah. In the Vosges, the south of the Vosges, the mountains are not as high, but they're quite nasty steep. Well, especially the Planche de Belleville.
I hear you with the Planche de Belleville. We spoke about it before we pressed record. The nice little shock where you think it's over, but it's not.
This is a climb. It's actually been part of the Tour de France, not this year, but some previous years. I think 2019 was the last. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the mountain and the climb. So this is a total unrhythmic climb all over the place. So it changes the gradient all the time. And once you think you're on the top of the mountain and you see, because it's a proper classified A1 pass, whatever the classification is. So you have a sign just mentioning the length and the gradients. And so on the top, you have that sign again. So having 0 kilometers left, so meaning you're on the top. And then you just look around and see, this is not the mountaintop yet. And then you just look up and you see, oh, this is the gravel part. And this is when it actually really starts getting painful, because then you have, like, I think on the very top, you have 24% of elevation. Yeah, so we had to push the bikes, to be honest. Yeah, we're not superheroes. We pushed the bikes, but it was just like 100 meters or so until the very top of the summit. But that was actually that highlight with a 360-degree view on the sunset and sunrise again. So that was quite nice.
Sounded like you earned those views, though.
Yeah.
There is a climb here in the Pyrenees. It's actually one of my favourites. It's called the Cirque de Trémousse, and it's similar to the Planche de Belfi in that you think you've reached the top, but you actually haven't, and the nastiness comes for the last 3 kilometres. It's really beautiful and scenic from a photography point of view, because the road just hairpin switchbacks all the way up to this magic rock amphitheatre, but your soul is dead.
But then you get the reward by going down. You can fly down into the valley again. Nice.
Because, Stevie, you love descending. We talked about this at length when you were here. Listeners, when the 4 of us went riding the Tourmalet, Stevie was like wanting to go at it. And actually, we descended the Tourmalet. We waited out a big storm that blew through. Then we descended.
Yes.
Trying to remember if it rained on us halfway down the descent or whatever.
It did, yeah.
And there were a few road cyclists with rim brakes who were gingerly coming down the mountain. We were all on our gravel bikes. When we get to the bottom, and Steve's like, why were those people going so slow? And I'm like, maybe because they're on rim brakes.
Yeah.
We were freezing. We had a 4-way hug. I have never been so cold. I thought I was hypothermic. I was physically, uncontrollably shivering for ages on the bike, on the descent. But what great memories we had. I want to speak to you for hours, and I know I can't. Well, not for this recording session anyway. But arriving home after a 2-month sabbatical, what's it like? Like, what's it like to wrap up such a big trip?
We are still on the way of doing it. So we are back home for 10 days now, almost. And, well, it takes really a long time to
recover to fit in the everyday life again. And so the body takes its toll after such a long time, because, like, when you're in that rhythm, you get up, get on the bike, get off, get on. So you have that daily doing. But when the body just recognizes it's over, my legs, my body was completely gone. And I slept I felt very, very tired. My legs were very, very tired. I slept even more than I did during the holiday. That was then for 2 days. And I think coming to the weekend, I was sort of okay again.
Yeah, and for me, it felt good to be home again. Yes, first of all, you want to see family and friends again. So this is also a big part. But it's also this feeling of that you did it, that we planned that trip for so long, and we had so many ideas. And then you are back. You did it. You come back on your own. Yeah. Well, thin tires. And you're back again and say, we did it. And this is really, really good feeling. And then luckily had some days left where we could relax and could pass all of the days, all of the adventures, all of the inspirations that we got during the road through our heads. And still the process is not closed.
It'll take another few days or weeks even. And another thing, being like a slow traveler for 2 months, getting in a car and experience that velocity of a car is quite amazing. And I'm still not used to driving 100k, and I'm not saying like we're racing the motorways, because like you can go unlimited in Germany. I think it's the only country in the world that has unlimited speed or no speed limits on the motorway. But when we're going over 80, I'm just like, I don't feel comfortable anymore.
Fine to fly down a descent on a bike, but uncomfortable at 80 kilometers an hour in a car.
That's it.
Yeah, the velocity. I think just the human brain is not meant to have this hectic things in life, or this velocity that a car gives you. It gives you freedom, and it gives you like the possibility to cover big distances, but it's still, well, if you're used to it, you don't recognize that. But if you're not used to it for such a long time, like for 2 months, then this is just amazing what it does to you.
It's interesting because it's something that I haven't thought about before, but you're probably really right. I was thinking, the come down, the trip's over, you're back to work, and I can expect that, and even adjusting to not physically using your body for so many hours day after day. For me, the biggest experience from a big cycle trip being over is I'm still hungry. Like I can still eat for 3 people. It's like my metabolism takes a while but yeah, the idea that adjusting to traveling in a faster mode takes some adjustment period as well. I really appreciate that insight. You mentioned there how you're still processing the trip and stuff like that. I do know that you did a lot of filming on this trip as well. You do have a YouTube channel, and I know that it's in German. I think I put a special request in for an English episode, maybe when you're in the Pyrenees. But give a shout out to your channel now. If people want to have an insight into your trip, how do they find you on social media, and what's your channels there?
So if it's related to the trip, I did mark that on Polar Steps, which is, I think, quite a new app where you can actually put up or upload pictures, and the pictures show where these pictures are taken. So you actually have a dotted line through the route that we took. So that's quite nice. And I can send you the link and you can put it into the show notes.
I will add it.
Yeah, perfect.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I've looked at your Polar Steps because I was tracking it for while you were here. In fact, I was using that to find out where you were on the Murray Blanc.
And for those guys who just want to have a quick look at some pictures, we have an Instagram channel where we posted a picture a day or something on the trip. And YouTube films, they will be published, I think, in a couple of weeks. Because we filmed a ton of stuff.
What did you say, 20 hours or something like that?
Yeah, 20 hours of filming. So I'm going to cut that into some episodes and perhaps also go for an English episode and perhaps get some English subtitles for our English viewers. Unfortunately, I have to ask for some patience until I can publish those videos. Yeah.
Totally understandable. And to my listeners, I've watched Stevie and Tom's YouTube channel, and I'll post a link to all your social accounts in the show notes. I've watched it even though it's in German, and I think I get the gist of it anyway. I'm hoping for a special English Pyrenees episode. There might be a special guest star.
Might be. Yeah.
Maybe. I need to wrap this up. I've got a few quick questions, quick fire. The first one's a new one that I've started asking purely because on the back of an interview with a guest, Mackenzie Barney, we have agreed that I'm putting together a Seek Travel Ride playlist. And so my question to my guests is, if you had to pick a song that would be a musical theme to your cycling adventure, what would that song be? So you're a couple, you don't have to pick one song. I'm going to allow you one each. Stevie, what's your song?
I actually had so many songs in my head. There was a song a day in my head. But to wrap it all together, it's actually the European hymn, which is Ode to Joy. That was in my head for quite some days.
I love it. I'll add it. And what about you, Tom?
Yeah, being an old Queen fan for decades now, it must be Bicycle Race from Queen. Because I think that song still represents so much the joy and the fun of riding a bike, and that's what we had. And I think it's representing it pretty good. Yeah.
And we used the bell quite a lot, didn't we? Every time when one of us was stopping and the other one was approaching again, we just rang the bell to actually get going again.
As soon as you mentioned Bicycle Race from Queen, I swear my ears just have that bell ring in them. Ding, 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 ding. It's just bicycle.
Exactly.
Anyway.
You have it. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, it is added. Okay, so 2 next questions. Stevie, I've asked you these before, but it'll be interesting after a 2-month bikepacking trip across Europe whether your answers to these will change. I'm asking these questions for both of you. The first one, if you were given the choice that you will cycle perpetually up a climb, or instead you can cycle for the whole day but into a headwind, which one are you going to choose? Tom, you go first this time.
I heard this question already, and before I did the trip, I would say going uphill. But after the trip, I would say, no, let's take the headwinds. I discovered that I'm stronger in the headwinds than uphill, so I choose now the headwinds.
Oh, playing to your physical strength. I love that.
We had some super strong headwinds in England at the south coast, and it was somehow nevertheless beautiful because it fits to the scenery, and I loved it, and Stevie hated it.
Yeah, but I can go behind him then, which gives me the advantage of having him in front of me, shading me from.
When you go on record as saying you quite enjoyed the headwinds, that means you're on the front every windy day from now until eternity, Tom.
Well, that's fun.
He's the perfect slipstream maker for me. So
Brilliant. What about you then, Stevie? What are you picking? Has it changed since our first interview together, or
no, still the climbing. It's definitely even more. I even more discovered that the planes just they're too boring for me, and I'm really looking forward to having another climb ahead. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Next question. This is interesting given that you did this trip as a couple. If you were going to be cycling hypothetically for 4 hours one day, would you choose to be able to cycle 4 hours on your own, or would you prefer to cycle 4 hours with other people? And when I say with other people, I don't mean both of you together. It could be anybody. But what are you going to choose?
Well, this is still a difficult question, I think. So sometimes I prefer to go on my own. Yeah, so that's also nice. But it's on the other hand also, if you have the right people, like the trip we had, the four of us, it was also great. So I can simply not judge. But I would do both.
Actually, and I would now, considering that we have a 4-hour trip, I would go with other people. However, longer trips, I might rather go on my own. For 4 hours, I'd enjoy the company of people.
Oh, I like it. So, Tom, you're sitting on the fence and I want to kick you off it, so I'm going to make you choose one.
Okay, then I will go on my own. I somehow prefer to go on my own, to have some time with myself. I think you can let your thoughts go, think something through.
Yeah.
And if it gets longer, I go with TV.
Lucky me.
I know this is a quick fire next question, totally unplanned, but I do feel like asking you, when a 2-month trip comes to an end, and you said you planned it, you're quite proud of it, what you've done, what you've achieved. 2 months away from a career path and stuff isn't something we can do all the time. But do you have your mind already looking forward to a next trip away? And I'm not saying for 2 months, but do you already start thinking about what's the next trip going to be?
Yeah, Tom is planning the next year, and next year will definitely be some bit more competitive again. So we're thinking of doing an ultra cycling event. We might not do the same one. Maybe yes, maybe no. So I think, well, it'll be a longer one than the Normandy Cut, though. And the rest will be a surprise. So we don't know yet. We're not decided. So
Yeah.
we've got different things in mind.
Yeah, that's what we're planning for next year. But we are also thinking about doing something similar, perhaps in a couple of years, not waiting too long. Yeah. So this year, this trip fits perfectly well into everything, into family life, into business life, and so on. And perhaps you can do it in a 2 or 3 years period from now again.
I definitely do it again anytime.
Yeah, I could start immediately next week. Yeah, if I would have the chance and everything would be perfect, you can start. Yeah, okay, then let's start again.
Yeah.
Your answers there really fit in with the fact that life, slow travel, discovering places on a bike, whether it's in a competitive sense in an ultra or just through discovery of bikepacking, it seems to sit with both of you so nicely there that you've ended a 2-month trip and it's not that you don't want to look at a bike again. You're already thinking this was such a great experience. It's been enriching for you. And I've enjoyed just hearing you talk about it. You've definitely put the inspirational thought, like I said, 2024, Pyrenees to Frankfurt is definitely happening. I have you both to thank for that. I'm forever thankful, Stevie, that we crossed paths in Normandy Cat.
Oh, so am I.
That was definitely fate to meet someone so well aligned and such a true friend that I have in you. Tom and Stevie, it has been an absolute heartfelt pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with Seek Travel Ride.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, Bella.
It was absolutely gorgeous speaking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That was such an enjoyable session there, chatting with Stevie and Tom and hearing about their sabbatical bikepacking adventure across Europe. I'd love to find out, do I have any listeners out there who've actually done something similar? Have you taken that sort of time away from your work, planned out a big bicycle adventure, gone on to that adventure? And if you have, get in touch with me and let me know where you went, what you did, and how it turned out for you. I'd like to also take an opportunity now to say thank you to all my avid listeners on the show who do get in touch and let me know the episodes that they've enjoyed a lot, how they resonated with them, and also people who've gotten in touch and told me about their own bicycle stories. I've had the privilege now of speaking to guests purely because people have gotten in touch from the show, and it's been so cool to find out all these people spread across all different countries around the world going on amazing trips on a bicycle and discovering all those insights from them as well. So I definitely want to say thank you there. If you're enjoying the show, make sure that you subscribe. New episodes drop out every week. Until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.